with them, which is to be gained by either making wudu or tayammum or ghusl, and being out of the two states of impurity, the janaba, which is the major state of ritual impurity, or hadath, which is the minor state of ritual impurity, both of which we spoke about in the previous chapter. So we're not talking in this lesson today about being in the state of ritual purity, being the state of tahara. That is the other great prerequisite to the validity of the prayer. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in a hadith, it's literally the first hadith of Tirmidhi, لا يقبل الله صلاة بلا طهور ولا صدقة من غلول, أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't accept a prayer without purification, without purity. Meaning what? That you should be clean, your clothes should be clean, the place you're in should be clean, and you should be in a state of ritual purity. And likewise, Allah Ta'ala doesn't accept sadaqah, He doesn't accept charity from ill-gotten wealth. And one should see and understand the relationship between the two. That if your prerequisites in order for something to be valid are off, then there's no scope for validity for the act afterward. The act is completely dead on arrival. We don't believe in this kind of like Talmudic, like making a fool of God, or these kind of old superstitious like beliefs that, for example, like in amongst the Mongols, right? Like Genghis Khan, his firstborn son, his name was Jochi, which means guest. Why? Because somehow or another they're like fooling the evil spirits, like don't harm this child is just a guest, you know. Obviously we don't believe in evil spirits as being gods anyway in the first place, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows and sees everything, and so when you do things, you have to do things on a rational tartib, in a rational order, in a rational arrangement. If the prerequisite is off, then the thing that's going to come from that off prerequisite cannot be anything except for off. Whereas if the prerequisites are done correctly, then there's a possibility that you can perform the next step correctly. You can also perform it incorrectly as well. But you know, that's the way that fiqh works. And so we're going to talk about right now in this chapter, not this state of ritual purity that's required for the prayer, which is also a prerequisite for the prayer, but prerequisites for the prayer other than being in this state of ritual purity that have to do with like the physical purity of a place, amongst other things. والمصلي يناجي ربه فعليه أن يتأهب لذلك بالوضوء أو الطهر إن وجب عليه الطهر. This is the principle that a person should keep in mind, is that the one who is praying, musalli, the one who is going to be performing the prayer, that person is going to go and entreat his Lord. Munaja means what? Means to speak to someone from up close. Nida is to call out from afar. Munaja or najwa means to speak to someone from very close. That you're going to go close to the Lord and you're going to speak to Him. Again, it's not a standard whatever Ash'ari disclaimer that it's not a spatial orientation matter, but the point is that when you speak to the king from close, this means that the meeting is really special, it's really important, rather than somebody who's just kind of like one of 1,000 like nameless and faceless random people in the court. The person who is going to make najwa, who is going to make munaja with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's what he has to say is important, and his meeting with Allah Ta'ala is important. It's important to Allah Ta'ala and it's important to you. It's important. What does it mean for it to be important to Allah Ta'ala? In the sense that He values it and He rewards greatly for it. And what does it mean for it to be important to you? That salat is your chance to make your case in front of the Lord, that He should save you on the Day of Judgment, when entire nations will be burned in the garbage heap of the hellfire. And the number one most critical factor in your account going well after faith itself is the salat. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the first thing that's going to be accounted for on the Day of Judgment is the salat, and if the accounting of the salat goes well, the rest of the account will go well. If the accounting of the salat doesn't go well, then the rest of it is not going to go so great either. I wish someone had told me this when I was younger. I was quite quite a bit older than I should have been when I heard this the first time. But alhamdulillah, mashallah, everybody's here. So فَلْيُبَلِّغِ الشَّاهِدُ الْغَائِبِ, the one who's present, let him carry this message to the one who's not present. So the one who's praying is going to go and entreat the Lord from up close. So he needs to prepare for that. That's a special meeting. There's an athar that's has no sanad, it has no what you call chain of narration. However, it is common amongst the ulama that they say that the salat is the mi'raj of the believer. And so this is one of the things that happened with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's the ascension, like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was taken by night from the Masjid al-Haram to the Masjid al-Aqsa, and then from there into the heavens. This was one of several occasions at which the angels took his blessed heart and washed it in order to prepare for that, that journey. Now, what does that exactly mean, and what are the details of it? I can't tell you. I can tell you some details, but what is the spiritual significance and what exactly was going on, I can't tell you. But I think, even though you and I don't know the exact details, like on a medical level or on a physical level or whatever, we can tell that this is what a preparation. That someone's going to meet the Lord, he's going to cross the boundary of the Sidratul Muntaha, the low tree of utmost boundary that even the angels cannot cross in order to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the preparation was something very special. At any rate, which is the pinnacle of the mi'raj. So if the prayer is the mi'raj of the believer, you have to look at it like that you're preparing yourself to be able to speak to the Lord and present your case to the Lord from up close. So the one who's intending to pray has to prepare either by making wudu or by making tuhr. Tuhr is a synonym for ghusl, for taking the purificatory bath, if the purificatory bath is obligatory for him. ويكون ذلك بماء طاهر غير مشوب بنجاسة ولا بماء قد تغير لونه لشيء خالطه من شيء نجس أو طاهر إلا ما غيرت لونه الأرض التي هو بها من صبغة أو من حمأة أو نحوها أو نحوهما عفوا وماء السماء وماء العيون وماء الآبار وماء البحر طيب طاهر مطهر للنجاسات وما غير لونه بشيء طاهر حل فيه فذلك الماء طاهر غير مطهر في وضوء أو طهر أو زوال نجاسة وما غيرته النجاسة فليس بطاهر ولا مطهر وقليل الماء ينجسه قليل النجاسة إن لم يتغير إن لم عفوا تغيره. So now he talks about the rulings of water and what the different rulings of like a aqueous liquid will be depending on what its source is. So he says that you have to prepare, that the one who's praying has to prepare with wudu or with a ghusl, and that's only possible with water which is pure and it's not mixed with any impurity, any ritual filth. Nor with any non-filthy impurity, any impurity that's not considered filth, but something that changes the color of that water, some solute that when admixed with that water changes its color. Whether that mixture is with something that is impure, like urine or feces or vomit or something like that, or something that is pure. Like, for example, you mix orange juice with water, enough of it will change the color of the water and the smell of the water and the taste of the water. But the exception to this rule is those things from the earth which mix with natural bodies of water, like the sabkha. Sabkha is like the salt flat, dried out salt marshes. Water drains into those places from rain, and so whatever solutes from that admixture mixes in with the water that drains into those flats from the rain, that doesn't negate the purification or the purificatory quality of water. Nor mud. If mud mixes with the water, that doesn't, like from the earth. When the water drains into a place and there's some mud, like you go to a lake, you step in the lake and like some dirt or earth will like kind of puff up and then it kind of settles down and the water's a little bit murky in the lake, especially lakes that are not running. That doesn't render the water unusable for the purposes of purification. The water that comes from the sky, which is all sorts of precipitation, rain, hail, snow, etc. All of them, if you collect them into a jar, you'll see that they're a little bit turbid and murky. Why? Because the pure water, when it's just basically humidity in the air, it's in its gaseous state, it will basically keep mixing with air to quite some point. What happens when there are particles of dust, ionized particles in the air? Water is a very interesting molecule. It's not a chemistry lesson, but it's an interesting molecule in the sense that, okay, it's one oxygen and two hydrogens. And the oxygen is really greedy for the electrons, the one electron that each hydrogen gives it. And so it kind of strips the electrons and pulls them toward itself. And so what happens is that the oxygen has one side of it which is completely negative and it's exposed, and it pulls the electrons. Each hydrogen has one electron, so it pulls it toward itself. So it kind of lives in the area between the two nuclei, between the hydrogen nucleus and the oxygen nucleus. And so what happens is then the back face of the hydrogen is also basically just a proton. It's a positive charge that's exposed. This is one of the reasons water mixes with things so well, is because if there's something that has a negative charge, it will cluster around where the hydrogen is. And if there's something that has a positive charge, it will cluster around the exposed side of the oxygen. This is why water also doesn't evaporate at such a low temperature. There are many other molecules of similar molecular weight as water that evaporate much quicker than water does. Why is it that water evaporates at such a high temperature? It's because the positive face, the positive face of the water, which is the side that the two hydrogens are on, will attract the negative face of the oxygen from another molecule. And this is a chemical phenomenon known as hydrogen bonding. Again, I'm starting to like steer off into like geek land, but it's important to understand these things. So what, at any rate, coming back to the issue of the water mixing with all of these different solutes from the earth, or in particular the rain, one of the things that triggers the rain happening is when you have a lot of humidity in the air. When there are dust particles that go up into the atmosphere, those particles are charged particles, and so they will pull a lot of water to them, and that water will weigh those dust particles that were otherwise airborne. It will make them heavy. And so when there's water that clumps around them, then not only does the dust particle attract the water attracts more water because of the hydrogen bonding phenomenon we're talking about. And that's basically one of the things that triggers rain. Otherwise, if the air was free of dust, then the precipitation of water from the gaseous state into the liquid state would take a lot longer for it to happen. This is why when you collect water in a vessel, if you look at it, it's turbid and murky. It may taste very clean, it will taste very nice. It's not enough dust to change the taste, but you'll see something lurking in there that doesn't look exactly as clean as like these kind of stupid bottled water commercials show. By the way, bottled water is evil. Bottled water is complete hoax. It's a waste of money. The tap has good water. It costs, somewhere like a quarter, a third of a cent a gallon, and it's just as good as the bottled water that you buy in bottles. In fact, it's better because it's not sitting in plastic that leaches endocrine disruptors that basically turn male frogs into females, and not just frogs, but it works for like Arab and Desi kids too, and it's makes garbage that chokes up the land and the air and the sea and kills the animals. Even the hatta al-hitan fi jawf al-ma, even it kills the whales in the cavernous empty spaces of the ocean, and it's just really bad. And for some reason, I keep telling people, for the love of God, don't bring it into ribat. If you're going to do it, if you're going to be some sort of like yoga mom, soccer mom type person who walks around with a bottle of water, don't bring it into ribat. But still, people bring it in here, and I know you guys all think that I'm just a mean person who's trying to like make it to the next edition of Unmasked, but I really try. I try. Please don't bring bottled water in here. Buy a reusable bottle for Ramadan, and just use that. Don't bring bottled waters. Don't bring bottled waters into your masajid either. Don't do it. Don't do it. Please, for the sake of the Lord, don't do it. Anyhow. And the dumbest thing is that most of the bottled water companies, they just use like a municipal tap water source anyway. So coming back to the matter at hand, it's the impurity that causes it to precipitate faster than it otherwise would have. وَمَاءُ الْعُيُونِ, and the water of springs, from the earth. It always has some sort of solute in it. The spring water sometimes is very nice. It has a very pleasant complement of dissolved minerals. Sometimes it's horrible. It smells like sulfur. It smells horrible. Some water smells bad but tastes okay. Some water smells okay but tastes horrible. Some smells bad and tastes bad. Some of the good tasting water is turbid and murky. Some of the good tasting water is clear. Some of the clear water tastes bad. Some of the clear water, all of these different kind of permutations, depending on what is dissolved in them, they can kind of come out, and I've experienced them at some point or another in my travels. The point is, all of them are valid for wudu if they're from this natural source. The mention of springs, we were reading Mas'ala in the Hidayah about the water of springs. Ustad Maulana Hassan, he said this. He said, because we're reading this in Punjab, there's no springs in Punjab. There's groundwater, there are wells that you dig up and things like that. He says, but I saw these springs when traveling over the mountains in Afghanistan. He said, we used to go on our break in order to fight the Russians. And he said we would go on our break and then we would come back when the year would start again to study. And he mentioned this. He said that some of our classmates didn't make it back. He said, don't think that person didn't, that person didn't graduate or didn't finish his studies, but that's their dawra, that's their ifta, that's their ijazat, and that's their sanad, and all of it is wrapped up in that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He accepts a person, that's what's important. So I thought that was also because the mention of uyun, the mention of uyun is there. Important to mention that the point of this study is not to flex in front of people. It's not so you can get a degree or certificate, or you can call yourself some name. And there are a lot of, because the other side of it is like, well, this is a need in society, and it motivates people, and it this and that and the other thing, and like, again, just like that one little dust particle attracts all the rain and falls down out of the sky. I see a lot of people who care about this way too much, and I couldn't give less of a damn about it. And it's not because it's not like do what I'm doing because it's me. It's because on the Day of Judgment it will mean absolutely nothing. It will mean absolutely nothing, so remember that. At any rate, so the water of springs is also usable for tahara. The water of wells is also used for tahara. Again, the earth, it comes from different strata in the earth, and contains different solutes and different tastes and smells and colors or whatever. That's water that can be used for purificatory purposes. And the water of the sea is pure, is pleasant and pure and purifying. So when you go into the ocean, the water is quite salty. Some of the inland seas are even saltier, right? The Mediterranean is saltier than the It's more saline than the Atlantic. The Black Sea is even more saline. The Black Sea and Caspian Sea and Mediterranean Sea, they're basically all remnants of an ancient ocean from a different continental configuration. The Black Sea and Caspian Sea have actually become like kind of hemmed in, and so I think like the Caspian Qazwin is like the top third of it supports life. The bottom 2/3 of the sea is actually anoxic. So if the body of some living thing actually sinks to the bottom, it doesn't rot, because there's no oxygen. There's very few. The bacteria that can survive there are so slow acting that that you can actually pull out things that have been dead for quite some while, and they're relatively intact. Obviously, the water kind of messes with them a little bit, but they're not like they don't rot or whatever. At any rate, the water of the sea is usable for these huge natural bodies of water. It's usable for tahara, even if it's salty or even if it's a little bit different. The color is different. It's turbid or murky or whatever. He says طيب طاهر مطهر للنجاسات. So it's pure. It's pleasant and pure. Tayyib and tahir here are basically synonyms of one another. And mutahhir, it is purifying for the one who wants to remove ritual impurity, filth from themselves, and that which the color of which is changed by something pure that has dissolved in it. That water is considered to be pure but not purifying for the purposes of wudu, or for the purposes of tuhur, of ghusl, or for the removal of najasa. So this is the text of what he's saying. So for example, like if you were to mix orange juice into water, orange juice is not ritual filth, but that orange juice water, you cannot make wudu from it. Why? Because it changes the color of the water. So anything that changes one of three awsaf, of three attributes of the water, the smell, the taste, or the color, noticeably, that makes that water unusable for purification. Except the exceptions are these natural bodies of water or natural sources of water that we mentioned from before. Now you had asked a question a couple of days ago with regards to the using something other than mutlaq, other than pure water with its three undisturbed properties. That can it be used to remove najis from something? And so there's another opinion in the madhab as well, which inshallah we'll take it as a homework assignment, that that it can be used as long as it completely removes the impurity from it. So here is a tanbihan. We're reading from the al-Fawakih al-Dawani, the Nafrawi's commentary on the Risālah, which is really interesting work. The fuqaha hate on the book because oftentimes instead of explaining the mas'ala, it'll just say what does Khalil say about it, which I think is like one of the many reasons I love this book. So let the haters hate. So the tanbihat he talks about, and tanbihat usually talks about those issues that are related to what was written but that are not mentioned by Ibn Abi Zayd. So the first tanbih, he says, لو زال تغير الماء بعد الحكم بنجاسته من غير صب مطلق عليه. So mutlaq here means ma mutlaq, the water. I know you understand, but for everyone else and whatever, that the mutlaq here means the water that had its awsaf, its attributes haven't been changed. من غير صب مطلق عليه كبعض البركي الذي تقلى وتقلي فيها النجاسة وكماء وكماء المحل المعروف بالحرارة. So like, you know, that a place that like the water is really hot, even though it's not free of admixture. Obviously, you're not using najasa to wash najasa out, but it's something that's mixed with something. هل يستمر عليه تنجيس هل يستمر على تنجيسه أو ينقلب طهورا؟ قولان الراجح منهما أنه باق على تنجيسه وأما لو زال تغيره بصب مطلق عليه ولو يسيرا أو تراب ولم يظهر أثر التراب فيه فإنه يصير طهورا وأما لو ظهر أثر التراب في الماء فإنه يستصحب تنجيسه وأما لو زال تغير الطاهر المفارق بنفسه وأولى بواسطة شيء فإنه يصير طهورا قطعا. So he says there are two opinions. Both of them are mufta bihi though. And my feeling is that he prefers the first opinion just because of the cautiousness of it. But this is an opinion that's useful for someone whose clothes are getting laundered, or somebody who's sending their clothes to dry cleaning. Because dry cleaning, by definition, there's no water in it, but it does completely remove the effects of the najasa, and so that's because you asked, and because Ibn Abi Zayd clearly says the opposite of what I told you. I wanted to share the what you call his kalam on the matter. Okay, where did we leave off? وما غيرته النجاسة فليس بطاهر ولا مطهر. He said that the water that has been mixed with filth, that water is neither itself pure nor is it purifying. وقليل الماء ينجسه قليل النجاسة وإن لم تغيره. So he says that the water that's mixed with impurity becomes impure. So it's neither itself pure nor is it purifying. It itself becomes impurity nor is it usable for purification. And he says even a small amount of impurity in a small amount of water will render that water impure. This is another opinion of Ibn Abi Zayd that he mentions, and my feeling is because he's also a muhaddith and also because of the khuruj anil khilaf, in order to give a safe opinion which is more cautious, he gives this opinion, but this is not the opinion of the Mālikī school, and it's not the opinion of Malik either, rahimahullah tabarak wa ta'ala. Malik's opinion is, so there are two issues. One is a small amount of impurity, what does that mean? And a small amount of water, what does that mean? A small amount of impurity is so little impurity that it doesn't change the taste or the smell or the color of the water it's being mixed in. And the small amount of water is a little bit more nebulous of a definition. So the Shafi'is are the ones they pull out the number the kullatain, like 215 liters. That's the dividing line amongst them for what a small amount of water is versus a large amount of water. And the Hanafis, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong and grab the mic if you know, but like my understanding from whatever like rudimentary shuruhat of Quduri or whatever is that what is considered a large amount of water is a body of water that's big enough that if you like slap it and wave it around on one side, the other side of the body is like still. Is this correct? So at any rate, I think the Mālikī opinion is probably closer to the Hanafi one in this matter. So for example, if a person has like 20 gallons of water and one drop of urine like falls into it, of course gross, right? But like we're talking about fiqh, like we're talking about definitions. According to what Ibn Abi Zayd is saying, that all that water is now useless for purification, and it's not usable for consumption either, because it's haram to use, to drink or to imbibe najis. Imbibe is just a fancy word for to drink. You took Spanish, right? Right? You know bebir, right? Literally it's the same thing. So you can't drink it. The Mālikī opinion, the opinion of the madhab is what? The opinion of the madhab is no. Even impurity, both impurity and purity, they don't affect the ruling of the water until or unless they change one of these three attributes of the water, which is its taste, smell, or color. However, يكره مع وجود الغير. يكره استعماله مع وجود الغير. The usage of that water for ritual purification, for consumption, and then بالطريق أولى, even more so than consumption for ritual purposes, is makruh. It's detestable if you have an alternative. So you're neither required to like prolong your thirst if you're like you have no other water to drink, nor are you to be without the ritual purification of water. The idea being that the najasa in it is so small it's not really affecting it, and it is gross that it's there. The fact that it's there, you're cognizant of it, it's not good. So it's better if you have a sink that you can get more water from or whatever. It's better just spill it out, go water the plants with it, and use it for something else, and don't use it for consumption. Don't use it for purification. It's makruh. You receive reward for getting rid of it and not using it. If there is other water available, if there isn't, then you use that water, and that's the position of the madhab, which is different than the position of Ibn Abi Zayd. He says that, but his what he mentions is that a small amount of impurity will render a small amount of water impure, even if it doesn't change any of its attributes. He says, وَقِلَّةُ الْمَاءِ مَعَ إِحْكَامِ الْغُسْلِ أو الغسل سُنَّةٌ وَالصَّرْفُ مِنْهُ غُلُوٌ وَبِدْعَةٌ. And so this is another وَقَدْ تَوَضَّأَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم بِمُدٍّ وَهُوَ وَزْنُ رِطْلٍ وَثُلُثٍ وتطهر بصاع وهو 4 أمداد بمده عليه الصلاة والسلام. And so he says that using a small amount of water in order to effect your purification is a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and being wasteful and excessive in the amount of water you use for purification is a waste, and it is extremism, and it is a reprehensible innovation. And the Prophet ﷺ, his standard wudu was by his mud, which is the volumetric measurement of his 2 Mubarak cupped hands ﷺ. And then he gives the weight of that water is 1 1/3 ritl, and he made ghusl from a sa'a, which is 4 amdad, 4 times this amount, by the amount of his mud sallallahu alayhi wasallam, upon him be blessings and peace. And so I remember there was a Mufti Abdul Ra'uf who was a teacher who taught Tirmidhi. He was a senior scholar somewhere in the southern part of Punjab, and I spent time with him in the Khanqah of my Shaykh Sayyid Nafis. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him. And I was somewhat of an oddity there. There's definitely no other Americans there, and there's definitely no other Malikis there either. And so, I got treated kind of like a museum piece. I got a little bit of attention from the mashayikh, and so, I still don't really know all that much fiqh, but the masail I know, I was very happy to share them as I'm to this day. And so, I mentioned that this masala is there in the Mālikī fiqh, that you're not supposed to use too much water, and more than a mud is like considered wasteful. He says, he says that there are a number of, because it's not just Mālikī fiqh, this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. He says, Tirmidhi, actually there's a narration in it that using too much water in your wudu is a source of waswasa, of obsessive compulsive misgivings in your prayer. And I was like, wow, that's funny, because everybody uses way too much water in their wudu in the United States. Okay, you can go like full like Mauritanian mode. Get your mud in a cup, have like go make wudu outside or whatever, or somewhere with with a receptacle to receive the water or whatever. And make dua for me if you do that, If you're not going to do that because of the effort involved, ma la yudraku kulluhu la yutraku kulluhu, just turn it down a little bit. All it does is it makes the wudu take like a little bit longer. So like whatever you could like wet the entire limb, in like a second and a half, just like 4 or 5 seconds. It's really not all that much. It's not all that much time and difficulty. When you start doing that, you'll notice then that you actually miss spots when you're missing spots, because you're now paying attention to what you're doing. And then you'll understand more properly the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that woe to the heels from the fire, meaning what? That the Prophet ﷺ noticed that people are not making wudu in their heels, their Achilles tendon, their ankles properly. That the water passes over, but it doesn't actually soak into the skin. All it takes is you just have to rub it a little bit, and the water gets in. Otherwise, literally, it's like still like half dry, even when you pour water over it. The most famous, I guess, hadith that's passed around about this, about not wasting water when performing tahara, is that the Prophet ﷺ was asked, is there such a thing as excess in water, in using water for wudu? And the idea is, okay, this is a good thing, so maybe using more water is better. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, yes, there is, even if you're making wudu out of a running river. Even if you're on a river that's running, still don't use an excess amount of water, which is really wonderful. This is the stewardship that the khilafah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the earth, that you're not supposed to be wasteful with things. And it's very interesting. Jews and Christians, not every single one of them, but a great block of pre-modern Jews and Christians, they consider the earth to be evil, and that you have to toil and struggle with it and subdue it, and kill the wild animals and like subdue the earth. And I saw a really horrible interview with Peter Thiel, who just, his face, you can see this man is like there's like constantly a rain of la'na on this person. It was by a very soft pitch, very sweetheart interview by some New York Times, I don't even want to say reporter or journalist, but just propagandist by the name of Russ Do That or something. I don't know how you pronounce his last name. So feeding him all these soft pitch questions. Peter Thiel is like this, basically like super evil, like homosexual, weird, like basically everything haram and like evil put together. Like it's this guy, Someone's like, hey, I have like suffer from these attractions, but I'm not nearly as evil as Peter Thiel is. You know what? You probably aren't. But this guy he's like gathers all of these like sick things in him. He's also a Palantir guy. So he's talking about how he wants in the future to alter and like get rid of all of the suboptimalities of humanity, of being human. Basically like using technology to upgrade a person, basically turning you into like some sort of Borg, like weird, like cyborg, like weird thing, like Krang. Did you watch Ninja Turtles? Remember Krang, right? Like basically he wants to, take people's brains out and then put them in a machine. Like he's talking some nonsense like this, And Islam is not like that at all, right? Islam, Allah Ta'ala made our father Adam alayhi salam, and then afterward his descendants, He made them stewards in the earth. He made them khulafa, that you take care of this for me. You also enjoy, eat, drink from it, have fun. There's a lot of fun that can be had in this earth, alhamdulillah, and enjoy a lot of enjoyment that can be had, but just take care of it responsibly. Don't destroy it. Don't trash the place. And there's this idea of fitrah, that the nature that Allah Ta'ala created everything and everyone on, that there's a lot of khair, there's a lot of goodness in it. So this is one of the stupid kind of objections that atheists have, like, if God is in control, how come babies are born with like abnormalities? The fact that there is a normal is why you know what the abnormality is. And this is how you can also fix it. So I don't want to hear from a dude who's like attracted to other dudes why somehow or another nature needs to be subdued. Why don't you fix that first? You know, it's a twisted, it's a crookedness inside that person. Again, I'm not saying this to put somebody down. Maybe someone will listen to this dars say, I suffer from the same thing. Oh my God, Sheikh hates me or whatever, right? I'm saying when I have a cold or I have a fever or I have any sickness, like I got cut and I'm bleeding. Okay, something's wrong. We try to fix it. Maybe I won't be able to fix it and I'll die from that thing, right? But at least I can accept that something's wrong. I know what's wrong. I know what needs to be fixed. Why? Because there is a normal. There's a fitrah that people are on. At any rate, coming back to this, this idea that even in wudu, that we're not wasteful people. Like we're stewards of I really think that's very important. People should understand that. I kind of get annoyed that Muslims get caught in this kind of left versus right culture war nonsense, and they treat taking care of the earth and taking care of its resources and taking care of living things as some sort of like liberal hippie fruitcake rainbow bright type thing, and it's not. It's part of our deen within reason. I mean, the resources are there to be used for our benefit, but if we can benefit and we can make a living and we can survive without trashing all of it, we're obliged, and Allah will ask us if we trashed things. So don't be like that. Don't use more water than you need to. Don't burn more things than you need to. Don't use more electricity than you need to. Don't do those things, because you'll be asked about all of those things. So this is your homework assignment. You can do that. Okay, get a mud of water and make wudu from it. Get a sa of water and make ghusl from it. You'll see that it's very doable. In the beginning, because we're so accustomed to using so much water for wudu, a person is kind of like overwhelmed by the prospect of having to make wudu from such a small amount of water. When you actually learn how to make isbagh of wudu, like perfect your wudu, then you'll be able to make wudu actually with far less water than that. We went to Afghanistan I guess almost 2 years ago at this point, and or coming up on 2 years I should say, and we visited. There was one Khalifa of Hazrat Maulana Hakim Akhtar Saab rahimahullah tabarak wa ta'ala, who lives in Lashkar Gah in Helmand, which is it's a very poor part of Afghanistan. Haji Ahmadullah, we went and visited him. Really sweet person. Really just like some people are just like human ice cream. And Pathans are known to be kind of harsh, rough, tough people, and so usually those aqwam of rough and tough people, the awliya amongst them are even sweeter than the sweet people of other aqwam. So he's one of these type of people, and so people don't know this, that Lashkar Gah, even though it's a really poor and backwards place now economically, but it's actually a very important ancient city. The name of the city is Bust. You've heard the name, I believe, of Anushirvan, who is one of the kind of old Persian legendary kings, and so he ruled from Bust. The Qil'a Bust of the ancient city is still there. You can see arches and things like that, and TB is on point too. You can't go in without a permit, because so many foreigners over the years they've been going to these places and just jacking stuff. So they actually protect all of the turath from unscrupulous Farangilar who are going to come and just steal things. But one of the places that wasn't protected because no one was going is the mazar of Ibn Hibban. Ibn Hibban is buried there, but since no one goes to visit, so that if you don't visit, you can't steal anything. So there's not really need for all that much security over there. So we went and visited, and I wanted to make wudu from before. Again, these are places where most houses don't have running water, and in that area, it's actually outside of the city. They have really beautiful villages that remind me of the villages in Punjab, where there are little channels of water running that irrigate the crops, and people just take water out from that for their home usage as well. And like kids running, and just really beautiful and bright picture, and a very hot. That area is very hot as well. At any rate, So I just had like a half a bottle of water and I made wudu from it. And Haji Ahmadullah was he was elated. He was like so excited. He's like, we stay in touch, mashallah. Like all the random Afghans I meet, like in Hajj and things like that, they always like WhatsApp me on like Eid, and a cab driver from this place or that place. They WhatsApp me on Eid and Ramadan, and they stay in touch. Allah Ta'ala bless them. So he always reminds me, because he remember that one time, we went in the old beat up Suzuki and we went to go visit Imam Ibn Hibban, and like, you made wudu from a small amount of water. Like that was the best. He goes, we waste too much water in wudu, and because they know it's a sunnah, but sometimes the practices of people kind of deviate from it. So it's good. Go ahead and try it at home. It's your homework assignment. Inshallah, no one's gonna look up to you and think you're cool for doing it, but you will practice the sunnah and you'll be protected from riyā, from showing off. وَطَهَارَةُ الْبُقْعَةِ لِلصَّلَاةِ وَاجِبَةٌ. And to keep the place of prayer, the physical place on which your body touches the ground for the prayer, is also wajib. It's also an obligation. وَكَذَلِكَ طَهَارَةُ الثَّوْبِ. Likewise, the purity of your clothing, that your clothing should be free from ritual impurity. فَقِيلَ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ فِيهِمَا وَاجِبٌ وُجُوبَ الْفَرَائِضِ وَقِيلَ وُجُوبَ السُّنَنِ الْمُؤَكَّدَةِ. And so then he mentions two opinions, that one is that the obligation for the place where you're praying and the clothing in which you're praying to be free of impurity. But one opinion is that that's actually an obligation, in the sense that if you don't do it, it's a sin. And there's another opinion that it's like a really rigorously emphasized sunnah, but it's not a legal obligation. The reality is that it is a legal obligation, upon which the validity, not only is it if you pray in a place that's not clean, not only is it a sin if you pray in clothes that are not clean of impurity, not only is it a sin, but you also jeopardize the validity of the prayer as well. One thing can be a sin, but the prayer is still valid. And this actually jeopardizes the validity of the prayer. However, all of these other prerequisites, other than being in the state of tahara, other than being in a state of wudu or ghusl, all of these other prerequisites themselves are contingent on qudra, on the ability to affect them. So, and we covered this in Akhdari, and we covered this in Ibn Ashir, that if you are praying and you don't have a place, there's no place you can pray that's free of impurity, then it's forgiven. If you don't have any clothes to cover your nakedness, your only two options are either you pray in clothes that have impurity on them, or you pray naked. Then you pray with the clothes with impurity on them. And if you don't have clothes to cover your nakedness at all, then you pray without clothes on. Whereas if you do have clothes and you pray without clothes on, then the prayer is not valid. So there's like a kind of cascade of obligations contingent on the availability of certain things. And so that's we covered those in detail in the previous books, but we're just suffice to say that, refresh that knowledge that we already covered. وينهى عن الصلاة في معاطن الإبل ومحجة الطريق وظهر بيت الله والحمام حيث لا يوقن منه بالطهارة والمزبلة والمجزرة ومقبرة المشركين وكنائسهم. So then he talks about those places that you shouldn't pray. And so the first place you shouldn't pray that he mentions is where the camels are kept. Why? Because it's filled with like urine and feces from the camel. Now the urine and the feces of the camel are not impure in the Mālikī school, but it's still gross and dirty, and so for that reason it's makruh. This is one of the alarming things about Mauritania, is that when you walk, you may walk even barefoot in the sand, there's just a lot of like animal refuse, but it gets desiccated in the heat of the sun, and after a while, like basically baking again and again, day in and day out, it's no longer it's gross because you can see it, but it's no longer really affects anything around it, and in various stages of decay, and it just kind of returns to the earth at some point. In fact, forget about the urine, the feces of the animal. The camel itself is like that, because imagine a camel dies in the desert. You're not gonna have a janazah for it. They're Badu. They're not. It's not like they don't even have themselves have a car. How are they gonna have like an ambulance come and take it to the morgue or whatever and incinerate it? And no, you just kind of leave it there because it's dead and it's really big. And so like you'll see dead animals like when you drive by the road in various states of decay. So there'll be a fresh corpse. It will be there'll be bloated corpses that are kind of open. You'll see corpses that are partially eaten. You'll see skeletons that have some dried meat on it. You'll see skeletons that are completely dry, and after a while you start to notice there'll be like piles of sand on top of the sand that are kind of the size and outlay of like a dead camel, but like a little bit of a different color because the bones have basically become powder at that point. It's all part of life. Anyway, so the commandment not to pray in the ma'atin ibil, the kind of the enclosure, camel enclosure, is karaha. It's makruh. Obviously, if there's something that's ritually impure in that place, then it becomes haram and invalid. But in general, it's makruh. It's disliked to pray in those places, and you get reward for going somewhere else and praying. That's a good way of thinking. Makruh, we think about it, well, it's not haram, right? So no, you're leaving reward on the table. Go pray in a cleaner place, walk like 10 feet outside and just pray. You get reward for that, more reward, increase in your reward for it. وَمَحَجَّةِ الطَّرِيقِ, and in the on the pathways that people come and go from. One of the reasons for not praying in the pathway is because animals and people will urinate and defecate there because of necessity. MashaAllah, the turnpike has some pretty sweet rest areas, but that's probably like when you're going from like Butilimit to Magdala Ahjar or something like that. You're not going to have a rest area. You just whatever back in the day. So go a little bit off of the road and pray. So one concern is for tahara, that there may be actually human urine and feces that are definitely najis, that are definitely impure and will invalidate your prayer because the possibility of them being there. If you know you're praying on them, then it invalidates the prayer if you have another option. And because the possibility is there, you just kind of walk off the beaten path and pray off of it, because it's makruh to pray on the beaten path because of the possibility of praying on top of that stuff. The other thing is it's a sin to obstruct and inconvenience people. So as Muslims, we should be always thinking about like the flow of traffic in life, whether you're at the grocery store or whether you're driving on the street. All of these things you should be thinking about the flow of traffic, right? When you go to Hajj, mashallah, the Nusuk app has opened up the packages for the Hujjaj. When you go to Hajj, don't just stand in the middle of something and you're like holding up pilgrims because you're having your like little moment and like 100,000 people are behind you and trying to pass, and then the Saudi guards, we all love to dump on them, but a lot of the stuff they do is for a reason. And they'll start yelling at you and try to push you to move out of the way, and they'll be like, oh my God, is this akhlaq of the Prophet? Is this, that? But the thing is that you're also inconveniencing like a huge number of people. So there's some of this as well. That this is one reason that don't ever pray where people come and go. Even in the masjid, don't pray your sunnahs in front of the door. When you're at Ribat, don't pray right here when I have to set up the live stream. Be conscientious of these things. So this is another reason that it's makruh to pray in the mahajjat al-tariq, in the middle of the pathway. It's just makruh basically, until or unless you know something that will invalidate the prayer is something haram. It's makruh because the great possibility of those things happening, even if you don't know for sure. ظهر بيت الله الحرام. Praying on top of the Kaaba is invalid. It's haram and it's invalid. The only reason to go on top of the Kaaba is people who have to do like maintenance and things like that. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered Sayyidina Bilal to get on top of the Kaaba and give the adhan at a moment of like that things were about to kind of break down into chaos during the Fath, and it kind of calmed people down, and brought their focus back on what the purpose of Islam was, and the purpose of the Fath was. But you can't pray on top of the Kaaba because you're supposed to be facing the Kaaba. You can't face it from on top of it, because there's no Kaaba on top. You understand what I'm saying? Whereas even within the Kaaba itself, you face one of the walls, you're in some way facing Kaaba. That's why the non-fard prayers are valid. The fard prayers have to be prayed from outside though. for that reason. But on top of the Kaaba, the Maliki opinion is not valid. Now Malik's opinion was also that you can't make tawaf from above the level of the Kaaba, which is problematic because this means the second and third floors of the mataf in the current Masjid al-Haram, it wouldn't be valid in the Maliki school. And that's the only place they let you go nowadays unless you're actually in ihram. Am I saying that it's like, giving the harf akhir that it's invalid? Allahu alam. The ulama of Makkah Mukarramah, they have their own fatwa regarding these things, and there is some difference of opinion about it. So if you have a choice, go and pray, go and make your tawaf in the mataf, make your fard tawaf in the mataf, the tawaf al-ifada. Make some effort. If it means that you have to keep your ihram on in order to be allowed in, then just do it. In the Maliki school, at any rate, it's even though you're released from from the prohibition of wearing stitched clothing at that point because you've already stoned the Jamratul Aqaba on the day of Nahr. But it's actually recommended to wear those two pieces of clothing that you stood in Arafat in while making the Tawaf al-Ifada. Why? Because it's like it's a badge of honor that you fulfilled this fard, and so you're wearing those same clothes that you fulfilled the fard in while you're making the Tawaf. It increases the acceptability, whereas nowadays they go stone the Jamrat al-Aqaba and all the uncles are gingerly shaving their beards stuff. Like, no, keep the beard, keep the thing, you're right now basking in the mercy of the Lord and the fuyud and tajalliyat of Allah's rahmah. Don't be like that. Wal hammam, the public bath. Why? Because people wash themselves, so God knows what's on the floor over there. It's makruh. Of course, if there's a pile of something that is najis, that will invalidate the prayer, and it's haram to pray there. And he says because you don't know whether the place is clean or not. Garbage dump. Same thing, it's makruh unless you know that there is something ritually filthy in the exact place you're praying, in which case invalid. Wal majzara, a butchery or a slaughterhouse, what our friends in England call an abattoir. I think you have to pronounce it. It's a French word, right? So in case someone from England is listening, we call it a slaughterhouse because we speak American here, right? Why? Because there's the guts and blood and things. Even if it's from an animal that's not, the urine and feces and the blood of which is not makruh, it's that edible animals, but still it's gross. So it's unbecoming to pray in those places if you have a choice not to. Maqbaratul mushrikeen wa kana'isihim, the graveyards of the disbelievers, of the polytheists, and inside of their places of worship. And so this is one of the reasons in the Maliki school the Jumu'ah is not valid outside of masjid in the first place. Chalo's difference of opinion, we're not going to be like Maliki Hitler, with this mustache, like whatever, right? It's America, what are you going to do, right? But for the sake of the Lord, don't pray in a church. People actually have Jumu'ah in churches, and I'm like, please no. They're like, can we put you on schedule for Jumu'ah in the church? No, please don't. No, you can't. It's why? Because the shirk that takes place in those places, even though it's they may be ritually pure, it's not good. A person should enter those places for ibrah. They should say their du'as beforehand, before entering into those places, and they should be cognizant of what Allah Ta'ala's punishment is for shirk, which is that a person goes to Jahannam forever. And if a person has something to do there, if you're going to make tabligh, you have to share the message of Islam with people who will listen to you. Go ahead and do it. You don't have to be afraid of the place, but we should not be excited to go there. We should not voluntarily go and pray our prayers over there. The prayer that's prayed over there, if all the other conditions are fulfilled, is valid, but it's devoid of reward. It's valid, but it's devoid of reward. And so I think I think our time is up. This is a good place to stop the reading. Are there any questions, inshallah, that anyone had? Yeah. You take the mic. Make sure it's on too, huh?
How do I?
Is it on? Yeah, just speak into it.
I was wondering about the line وَمَا غِيرَ لَوْنَهُ شَيْء. Why did he just mention lawn here and not طعم and ريح?
I don't know. The lawn, ta'am, and rih, all three of them are, all three of them are what changes the ruling of the water. I don't know why he only said he only mentioned color instead of color, taste, and smell. But we know these things from the previous books that we read. Perhaps it's actually assumed that you already know that by this point.
On that same vein, when we were talking about the lawn being najis, does this include like physical things, or are we talking about when it totally dissolves? I'm talking about the masala of having a small najis dropping. If it's like something physical, you can see.
If it's something physical and you throw it out, and none of the attributes of the water are changed, then it's makruh ma' wujud al-ghayr. At the end of the day, the contact with that najis will see something of it dissolve in, even if it's small. So it's makruh to use if you have an alternative. Like there's a mas'ala that is in the Risālah about, and it's mentioned like later on with regards to slaughter and food and things like that. So that mas'ala is like if a rat dies and falls into a vat of oil, you have to throw the oil out. But if it dies and falls into a vat of like shortening that's like solid, you can just cut out the shortening around it and throw it out, and the rest of it you can use it as long as it hasn't been there so long that it's like started to seep like bloat into the rest of it and affect it. So there's some effect that's going to happen.
These places like Ma'atan al-Ibil, it's just like salah still valid there though, if you were to make the salah?
The Ma'atan al-Ibil, the salat is valid there as long as you're sure that like you're not praying on actual najis. But it's makruh because it's still gross, not a clean place to pray.
Will salah have to be repeated or anything like that? If someone did pray there?
Have to be repeated? No. I think recommended to be repeated. Yeah. Within the time, The issue is that in the ibadat in general, when something is makruh, that thing, if you do it, it's valid, but it's devoid of reward. So if it can be repeated, then it's repeated for the idrak al-fadila, so you can get the reward for it. But it's still valid. It doesn't have to be repeated.
There's churches, he's talking about churches that are still being utilized as churches.
Can I hear what he means by that is every place of worship other than those of Islam, yeah. Not including Nation of Islam, not including Qadiani, not including any of those things.
Why not including those?
Because they're not Muslims. Because the Nation of Islam worships a rug merchant from the east named Master Fraud, and because Qadianis, their false prophet claimed nubuwah after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So because of that, they're not Muslims.
Yeah. Their place of worship would be included under.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we discussed.
Can you give him the mic, please?
Yeah, I think we discussed this before, but since you mentioned something related, it's like you said for
use the mic, mashallah. Who knows? Somebody else will listen. It will change their life. They'll be like a big wali of Allah, and like you and me are just like these, like lousy and useless people. But we'll have all this reward because you used the mic, so he like benefited from your brilliant and charming and wonderful question.
Inshallah. So you said these physical places, if someone does not have a choice, it is still the salah is still acceptable. But if for purity wise, like you don't have wudu or tayammum, you cannot pray.
Yeah,
that's
about right. Yeah,
and you cannot make up the prayer for the wudu and tayammum.
If you're ever in a situation, faqad al-tahurain, the person who doesn't have access either to water to make wudu or earth to make tayammum, for that person the prayer is not wajib. So they neither pray nor do they have to make it up. Right? And that dispensation is there. Why? Because the necessity to be in a state of tahara to pray is absolute. There's no relaxation in it. So if you cannot come into the state of tahara, then you don't have to pray. Whereas these other prerequisites, the purity of your place of prayer, the purity of your clothing, the covering of your nakedness, and the other things that he's going to mention, inshallah, we'll talk about next week, that if you're not able to do those things, then the necessity of them is waived, but you still pray. Yeah. All right, barakallahu feekum, sallallahu ta'ala.